Hi, I'm Paula Maidens, and this is the Pricing on the Cake.
Welcome to the Pricing on the Cake, the podcast that's all about growing a profitable business confidently. Today on the show, I'm joined by Paula Maidens. Paula, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I'm really excited about the things that we're going to be chatting about today. But Paula, first, would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm Paula Maidens, and I'm a team building expert. So I help fast-growing entrepreneurs build high-performing teams. So that means people that they can trust, people who they believe are capable, so that the business owner, the entrepreneur, can actually scale their business with ease and build the life that they deserve.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. That's amazing. That sounds awesome. How did you get into doing what you do today?
Well, I've done all sorts of things, but about 15 years ago, I was a recruiter. I was a director of a recruiter in a global recruitment firm over in London. And then about 10 years ago, I came back to Australia and decided to take those sort of, big dollar concepts, big corporate concepts, and start to translate them into like smaller bite-sized pieces, I guess, that apply to small business. So 10 years ago, I started teaching smaller businesses how to recruit, so to give them the power back when it comes to recruiting the right people around you. Sure. And then in the last 5 years, I've transitioned to working just with small growing online businesses, with that online remote type of team. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, awesome. So one thing that's in my mind, though, is when you came to Australia, what drew you to online entrepreneurs and small businesses? Because I can imagine that there would have been a big opportunity to get, those bigger contracts or big, employment salaries and things in corporate world. What drew you to helping small businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess that what I realized, so when I first started my own business 10 years ago, I worked with businesses of all shapes and sizes. At first, like we all do when we start business, we sort of work out, well, what feels right, what's our niche, et cetera, et cetera. So I was working with lots of different size businesses, lots of different industries. But what I did realize was that the challenges, so the hiring and leadership challenges that big businesses were facing were exactly the same in small businesses, but the impact of the challenge was much bigger in a small business. Okay. So, in the corporate end of town, in the bigger business, if you have someone who's not quite pulling their weight, or if they call in sick, etc., you've got all these other people around them that can kind of absorb and pick it up a little bit. Yeah. Whereas like we all know, if you're in a small business and, your VA, the only person that works with you, calls in sick, or isn't performing or isn't the right fit, etc., it impacts your whole life. Suddenly you're not thinking straight, you can't sleep well, etc., etc. So the impact was much greater in a smaller business. So that's why I shifted about 5 years ago to be like, right, I'm just going to specialize and work in this smaller business end of the market. Work with the people who need it the most, so to speak, and actually make it feel much more doable. So I'm all about practical, bite-sized, easy to run, simple systems, and sort of, getting rid of any of the fluff or unnecessary stuff that sometimes we're used to see in corporate.
Oh, that's really, really cool. I really admire your passion, your determination to help the people who, even though the challenges are the same as you said, the impact is so much greater because there's not, you're exactly right. You don't have as much support there. You don't have as many resources in the form of people to, pitch in and help out with that. So the thing that I really want to chat about today is for entrepreneurs who are working on their own, so they're the CEO, the boss of their own business, and maybe they've been going for a couple of years now, maybe a few years now, and they really do need to outsource, but they have no idea where to start. There's so much uncertainty. There's a lot of fear there about what if I can't afford it? What if I pay all this money and it's not worth it? I don't get, good bang for my buck. Tell me a little bit about that and about that thinking and how you approach that for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we've all been there, and what you're feeling is totally normal. If I can just put that out there.
Yes.
And I like every other change or evolution that we go through when we're growing our business, it's what feels really uncomfortable now will soon feel normal, and in hindsight we'll be like, oh, okay, look at all the things I learned along the way. Yeah. So typically what I see people doing wrong is that they hire a friend, they hire when they're feeling really overwhelmed or stressed or busy, and then they make a really quick rash decision. They hire without properly sitting down and working out, what do I need this person to do? What does success look like? What does the business need? They hire when they're in that state of, oh my goodness, I need so much help. Can anyone please help me? You'll do.
Yeah.
And so if we hire from that emotional panic state, then obviously we're not making the best decision. So what we want to do is often we want to hire before we're ready, or hire before we're pushed to that point where it's not necessarily before we're ready, but sort of like, if you're wondering, oh, I'm okay, I'm getting along, I'm not too busy, blah, blah, blah. It's like hire now when you've actually got that space in your brain, and start to do it in a really proactive way. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice. Hire earlier rather than later. And one of the ways we can start to overcome the fear around the cost and the expense and all those sorts of things that come along with bringing someone into your team is to sit down and think and ask yourself this question: if only I didn't have to do what, then I could get on with what. So you get to keep it really simple. We get to make it really easy and just go, what are the things that I'd like to stop doing? And if I didn't have to do those things anymore, what would I then be able to focus on and start doing? And if that thing we want to start doing is something that relates to growing revenue, improving a customer experience, putting our pricing up, something that's going to elevate the revenue in the company, then suddenly we can start to see a direct link between the cost that we might be spending on getting someone else to do all the things and where that revenue is going to start to come back. So that's how we're able to sort of start to put some of those fears at bay.
Okay.
And then the other little question we can ask is, if only I knew how to do what, then finally we get going with what. So that might be, if only I knew how to create those fancy Canva tiles, tiles on Instagram, or it might be, if only I knew how to do those like whiz bang videos, or whatever it is, then what would you be able to do with that? And then again, thinking, and what would that bring my business? And again, that helps us to go, okay, so would that bring in money, or would this bring in money, and where can I get that return on my investment back?
Yeah, definitely. I love that you mentioned the fact that it really does need to bring you back money or time. I find is another one that I see a lot, and one that I think about a lot. I know that for myself, for people that I've hired or jobs that I've hired people for, I'm always thinking about, okay, well, is this moving the needle in my business? If it's not a massive needle moving thing, I'll find a way to do it myself, because I want to make sure that any money I'm spending in my business is going to come back to me either in time saved or money made. And I think that's a really, really important thing. I was always in that position of being really, really terrified before hiring someone for the first time. And oh my goodness, I wish I'd done it sooner, because like my social media manager, for example, Gemma, she's amazing. For every $1 I pay her, I get $5 back. I'm absolutely certain. If that's an estimate, I haven't actually sat down and worked it out. But, in terms of just a sheer amount of time that gave back to me in the week, and all of the mental load that took off me, I was able to then take on more clients and earn more money. And so it's a no-brainer for me. And I think that, it's just about, like what you said earlier, like biting the bullet and just doing it, and realizing that you as the CEO of your company, you can't do everything. You're not going to be able to grow your business and do everything at the same time. And eventually you're going to need to do that. What would you say are the best first steps to make? Let's say someone is thinking, okay, well, I feel kind of ready to bring someone on. I'm not in a desperate, panic state or anything. What are the first things they should do?
Yeah, I'd write down a list of the things that you don't like doing, or the things that are really easy for you to get somebody else to do, or teach somebody else to do. Don't like doing. They're the things that typically we take far too long to do anyway. So it's probably more efficient if somebody else does it for us. And the things that are easy to teach somebody else is often repeatable tasks. So have a look and think about the last day, the last week, the last month in your business, and think, what are the things that I do over and over and over again, or should be doing over and over and over again? Because they're the things that you could really easily create like a little Loom video and record what you're doing, and really easily just hand to someone and go, do it exactly like this. And it's right off your plate. And that's what I would consider a low value task. So for me, it's like reconciling transactions in Xero. I can literally do it with my eyes closed. You do it with your eyes closed. It's all automated. I don't need to be the one clicking that button. Because as far as, and then thinking about, well, what are the things in the business that only I can do, or the things in the business that only I should do? Maybe it's something that I need to touch so that a client gets a certain experience. Maybe it's wisdom that only I can share. Like starting to think about, well, what are the things that I should be doing? And as soon as you start thinking, what are the things I don't want to do? What are the things I should be doing? What are the things? And suddenly it's like you get this big pile starting to list up of all the things that you could hand over to somebody else. And then it comes down to budget.
Yeah.
Yes. And it comes down to looking at, well, how many hours of things have I got in my list? And how do I feel about, paying somebody $5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, etc., to do that. And that's when we need to think about if I wasn't doing that, what would I be doing? And would that bring the revenue in for me, or would that be able to cover the costs? Can I afford that for the next couple of months until that revenue starts to come in, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a really good summary. It's almost as if you do this every day.
Kind of.
So talking about, those first steps, writing down things we don't like to do, things we should do, and so on and so forth. How do we know who to hire, like what to hire for? Like, let's say that I wrote down a list of things I don't like to do, and they touched all different sorts of categories. Like maybe some of them are admin, maybe some of them are graphic design, maybe some of them are marketing or bookkeeping or things like that. How do we know who to hire first?
Yeah, what a really great question. So it does start with that big long list and then grouping them together, as you started to say, into categories. So what's admin, what's financy, what's etc. And then it's a matter of stepping back and thinking, well, can I teach all these things to somebody else? In which case you can hire just a general person who can learn to do all the things your way. Okay. Or are there some things on this list where I would like somebody's specialist skill to actually take what I'm doing to the next level? So perhaps, look, I'm sure there's probably some sort of automatic reconciling function that I could probably get happening. That'd be an example of taking the process to the next level by getting like a proper qualified bookkeeper to be looking at that. And I guess it's a little bit of personal preference there. Some people like the thought of having the one person doing more. Okay. In which case, if you can teach them to do everything the way you're currently doing it, you can bundle things more into one person. Or you can look at your list and think, well, actually, there's some things in there which I feel like we could be doing better or that I don't know how to do. Then you can divide it into a more generalist and a specialist role. So I guess to answer your question, there's no right or wrong. Okay. It's around what feels good to you. And one of the things that I teach and talk to all my clients about is we've got to look inwards a little bit to what feels right for us and always tune into our unique leadership style. Yeah. So rather than replicating what somebody else has done or doing specifically what, a step-by-step process has apparently told us, what I want to encourage everybody to do is think, well, actually, how do I feel if I think about myself being surrounded by lots of different people, and not physically surrounded necessarily, surrounded
virtually surrounded.
Yeah, virtually surrounded by people. Or does the thought of me just having one person who's in my business every day, even just for a couple of hours, does that feel better? Okay. Because we're all quite different from that perspective. And then, the next layer is, and how often do I want to talk to the person? Do I want to be interacting with them all the time? Do I want to actually not interact with them very much at all? Do I want to be sort of left to my own devices and leave them to their own devices, etc.? Because we've got two sides of the equation, what we want the person to do, but also how we want them to do it. And it's that how piece that we don't often spend enough time thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think that's something that was something that surprised me in terms of, having people in my business for the first time, was realizing I get to actually decide things. And it's like you have, there's just so many more options than you thought, and you get to make so many more decisions than you thought. There's a lot more, this sounds horrible, there's a bit more power there almost, although I try not to think about it like that. And at the same time, that's a big step up. It's a big responsibility all of a sudden when you've got team members. I don't know about others, but as now that I've got people on my team, I kind of feel like I'm not just working for my clients, I'm also working for them. Like I want to make sure that I'm doing a really good job so that I can keep them on my team. That's a really big responsibility. You know, do you find that a lot with your clients who are hiring people for the first time? Like do they, you know, find that challenging, or the idea of stepping into leadership, or, you know, having that responsibility of other people?
Yeah, absolutely. And to share, quite honestly, is it doesn't often stop.
Okay.
So one of my clients, she's been in business for quite a few years. She's got, you know, enough team members around her, but we're hiring a new person. And even then she's sort of sitting there saying, okay, wow, like this is the next level. This is the next, you know, this is, because I guess it's a larger role. It's a greater responsibility that she's handing over to someone. And so she's sort of leaning into that. And I guess that's just that growth, isn't it? It's just that little bit of uncomfortableness as we go, oh, growing. It's like, you know, probably through the same time, similar to when we first get a mortgage or we first buy a car and the bank gives us money. It's like, you know, but I guess, you know, it's responsibility. It's you're taking people on your journey with you, which is equally as scary as it is exciting. But, you know, and I guess we don't need to overcomplicate it when we think about you get to make the decisions and there are lots of options. You also get to tap into the advice of the people around you.
Yeah.
Well, often when we're hiring, what we don't necessarily realize is actually this big research process as well. So if you are putting an advertisement out or you're putting your feelers out there for someone to work with you, use that as just a big exploratory research conversation. So it's like, you know, how much do you normally get paid? What do you normally do? How do you normally do it? And if you're feeling really like, oh, I don't know what's next, use these conversations to get a sense of, oh, I wouldn't like that, or oh, I like that, or that sounds really good. So for example, if you ask for a virtual assistant or someone to come into your business, one virtual assistant might say, you know, put all my tasks that need to be done into a project management system so I know what to do. Another virtual assistant might say, well, just send me lots of messages and then I'll come up with a list and bring it to the meeting to discuss with you. And you might think, oh, that sounds good. Or no, I'd do it that other way. Like so by talking to people, you'll get a bit of a sense of, oh, that feels good. That doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Okay. And that brings me to processes and systems, which is something that myself and a lot of other women in business I know, I'm sure it's not just women in business, but like, I don't know what it is. Systems are just, I can't stand them. They're the bane. That systems and admin are like the bane of my existence, and that's why I have people helping me with those things.
Well, good on you for knowing that, and good on you for getting people to help you with it.
Absolutely. I'll be the first to admit I'm the worst when it comes to like admin and stuff. I'm a pricing expert. Admin is not my thing. But like, I'd love to, you know, get to know your thoughts on, you know, why is it so important to get our systems right, even so early on? Because I used to think, and I know a lot of people, a lot of, you know, women in business think that, you know, I'm so early on, it's just me, I'm not a big company, you know, why is it important that I prioritize something like systems when I'm just trying to get clients or I'm just trying to get my marketing sorted? Tell me a little bit about, you know, what are the benefits and what are the returns from prioritizing new systems?
Yeah, for sure. So I believe that systems and systemization will actually set you free. And most entrepreneurs and business owners actually feel quite caged by the thought of systemization. So you're definitely not alone there. Sometimes it's because of like previous experiences where you felt quite trapped, I guess, in corporate roles and things like that. And sometimes it's just not in your nature. It's like, hey. So the concept of systemization setting you free, systemization gives you the ability to actually have flexibility, I guess. So if you're constantly doing things differently, if you're constantly working things out on the fly, if you're constantly doing things a slightly different way each time, you're not getting efficiencies for a start, but also what you're not doing is creating an opportunity to be flexible by handing it over to somebody else. So if you're sitting there as a solopreneur or as, you know, the only person in your business thinking, yeah, but I don't have any staff, so it doesn't matter if no one else knows how to do this, you're creating yourself a really big job for the moment you do decide to hire to actually kind of create all the systems then to be able to hand it over.
Yeah.
So if you've got a repeatable task that you're doing all the time, I really want to encourage you, next time you do it, just hit record on Loom or Zoom and just record in a way, if that's easy for you, or just record it in a way that's easy for you. If that's writing it down, if that's talking it, if that's videoing it, just do it in a way that's easy for you. And that tiny little thing is the first stage of creating a system. So it doesn't need to be anything fancier than that. And you just compile them, label them as what they are, and that's the beginning of your systemization. So then the next stage, when you start hiring people and people start working, they're able to follow that system, ideally evolve it slightly. Maybe they'll tweak it and put their expertise or improve it slightly, and they'll update the system. So then when you have people working with you, then you get to a stage in your business where you start to rely on people. Yeah. It's like, goodness, I'm not doing this anymore. Now I'm relying on somebody. Yeah. Now, if somebody suddenly gets sick, goes away, leaves your business, has a life change, then your business can come to a halt if you don't have a system. Because we want to ideally, eventually create a business where people work within our systems. Yeah. As opposed to a business where the people are the system and they're holding up. Okay. So if that makes sense. So
definitely.
If you create the system, you hand it to somebody, they follow it, improve it, tweak it, and then if they
it can be handed over.
It can be handed over to somebody else. So your business is able to continue. So it's like this concept of systemization will create sustainability in your business for people to come and go. And it'll also create flexibility for you to go on holidays. Hooray. Yeah. And it'll just give you freedom from that perspective.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I remember when I spent weeks doing all of my systems and, moving everything to G Suite and Google Drive, making folders for everything and templates and checklists and all these things. And yeah, it was painful, but oh my goodness, so worth it. And it saved me so much time, saves my staff, a lot of time as well. Then they don't have to come back to me constantly going, how do I do this? What do I do? What do I do? I've given them, the tools that they need to kind of do those repeatable things, as you say. So something that is a little bit of a sensitive topic is, if you hire someone and let's say that, in the initial conversations when you talk to them, they seem fantastic, they seem amazing, they seem, really lovely, really friendly. Maybe they're really great and they perform well for like a month or so, and then they start to sort of, not perform so well and, get a little bit poop. If entrepreneurs find themselves in that position, especially if they don't have any kind of leadership or supervisory or management experience, how do they deal with that? Like, how should they approach it with that person?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to approach every conversation is with a curiosity to understand why. So whether someone's made a mistake in your business or whether somebody's not performing, what we don't want to do is respond from the ego, which is like, why are they doing this? I'm offended. I can't believe they're doing this to me. They're letting me down, that emotional sort of response. Yeah. So if we can lean into, oh, that's interesting. Curiosity, interesting. Oh, I wonder why they're not doing that, and go at the conversation from that perspective. So, hey, Courtney, I've noticed that you are or aren't doing X. Talk me through it. What's going on there? And just engaging in a conversation to find out why, and just digging around going, so why did you think that? Why didn't you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And then ideally we want to take that conversation and then link it back to our original expectations. So even we draw on those initial conversations that we had at interview. So you remember when we first chatted, we talked about doing X, Y, and Z. We talked about what I was looking for was somebody to come in and do X, Y, and Z. So where are we now? How do you feel about that? Are you still wanting to do X, Y, and Z? Do you think you're able to do X, Y, and Z? What's missing that's stopping you from doing X, Y, and Z? What do you need from me to help you do X, Y, and Z? So always coming back to that, these are the expectations. This is what the job requires. And working out, well, why is the gap there? And I guess what pops out the end of it is either somebody doesn't know how to do it, in which case it's a training gap. Someone doesn't want to do it, in which case it's kind of like a willingness gap. Or, I guess it's someone's unable to do it because maybe they don't have enough time, maybe they're overworked, maybe there's something else going on. And so then once you actually kind of get a little bit clear on what's stopping it, then you can work from there. If it's a training gap, okay, well, what training do you need? And are you going to go get that training, or are you expecting that training from me? If it's a willingness gap, it's like, well, this is what we require. So where's that going to leave us? And if it's unable to, then I guess it's a reallocation of work, or a discussion around whatever it is that's stopping the person.
When I'm re-listening to this podcast, I'm going to write that down just for future reference for myself, because I think that that the attitude that you talked about of curiosity is really, really good. It's very, very wise. It can be really easy, if someone lets us down or that, to kind of get very justice driven and think like, oh, like what are they doing? Like I told them to do this and they're not doing it, blah blah blah. It's so easy to do that because we're human, but at the end of the day, we're not just people, we're also representing our business, and it's so important to maintain that professionalism and another perspective and having that empathy for them as well. I'd love to hear, Paula, your advice for entrepreneurs in terms of managing people if they haven't managed before. So maybe they're at a point where maybe they've hired someone and maybe that someone is expecting them to give them instructions, or they're leaning on the boss quite a lot. If an entrepreneur doesn't feel confident in that, or doesn't feel like they have the ability to, where should they go? Or is there a particular kind of, are there any kind of resources or tips that you would suggest to entrepreneurs to kind of build themselves as leaders and as managers of teams?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I believe is a little bit lacking in the market is actually that small business leadership. So that focus on that side. So absolutely lean into leadership, lean into learning what you need to do to actually be the sort of leader that you want to be. So go and look for somebody who is talking and communicating in a way that feels good to you, because one of the things we don't want to do is start leading or acting in a way that doesn't feel authentic to ourselves. Like I believe that authenticity is one of the most, like it's the number one trait of a great leader. So go and look for places as to, that's definitely what I do. I teach people about leadership and hiring. So go and, surround yourself either in a mastermind, go and work with a coach one-on-one, but go and actually dive into the world of leadership and just lean into the uncomfortableness of it. Starting with acknowledging that, there is a gap there. That's great. And start to almost, and even if you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, I've been a leader in corporate, I've done leadership things before, I should know what I'm doing. Actually, you can park that as well. It's different.
Wow.
Small business leadership is quite different. Leadership, leading a small startup entrepreneurial business is very different. So just surround yourself with knowledge and just dive in. There's lots of resources around. Go and follow people online. Yeah.
Awesome. That is really, really cool. Whew. What a whoosh of an episode. It's gone really, really quickly. Paula, I'd love to just hear any final advice that you would love to give entrepreneurs who haven't hired yet and just feel like they don't have the confidence or they don't have the know-how. What would you say to encourage them to get out and hire their first person?
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, I encourage you to do it before you feel ready. You'll probably never feel ready. And start small. So think of either what's the easiest thing for you to hand over, or what is the thing that you would like to hand over the most, the thing that you don't want to do, and start small. And maybe it's just 5 hours a month or something like that, handing it over to somebody. And, you get to learn in baby steps if you'd like to. And I think also give yourself permission to not feel ready, to not know everything, and it doesn't need to be perfect. You get to learn as you go, and just surround yourself with people and resources and people who have done what you're looking to do, and just learn and just get going.
Yeah. I have to say, hiring people and having a team is so much more fun than I thought it would be as well. As long as it's like, when it's the right people, it is. But, just having people around you as an entrepreneur is one of the most encouraging things. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today, Paula. If people want to get in touch with you and find out how they can work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can pop over to my website, paulamaidens.com, or follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I've actually got a Facebook group, which is called Savvy CEOs, Savvy Secrets for CEOs. So you're welcome to join there with regular trainings. Come and find me and join the conversation.
I also recommend, I can't English today. I also highly recommend subscribing to Paula's newsletter, because I love your newsletters, by the way. I think you write them really well. They're not too long. They're not boring. They're very nice, and they're very, it feels like they understand me, but you share a lot of tips and things in there that are very encouraging for entrepreneurs who are, you know, thinking of growing their teams or, you know, hiring their first person and things like that. So yeah, that's another resource I'd love to recommend. But all right, so that is all done. Please don't forget that you can always find more free resources on the Pricing on the Cake Facebook group. You can also contact me at courtney@courtneydeegan.com. I love getting emails from you and I'll always reply. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.